Every single day, millions of women are eating foods they think are completely fine. Normal breakfast, normal lunch, normal dinner. But what if some of those everyday foods are quietly feeding cancer cells and nobody warned you? This isn't a scare tactic. This is science. And the seventh food on this list? Almost every woman eats it multiple times a week without even thinking about it. Let's start with number one. And this one surprises a lot of people. Processed meats. Hot dogs, deli turkey, bacon, salami, anything that's been cured, smoked, or preserved with nitrates. Studies have consistently linked high processed meat consumption to increased breast cancer risk. The nitrates in these meats can convert into nitrosamines inside your body, and nitrosamines are powerful carcinogens. You're not eating poison, but you are giving your cells something they were never designed to handle regularly. If processed meat is a daily habit, that's the first thing worth reconsidering. Now, number two is something you might actually be proud of eating, and because it sounds healthy. Farmed salmon. Yes, salmon. The problem isn't the fish itself, it's how it's raised. Farmed salmon are often exposed to higher levels of PCBs, dioxins, and other persistent organic pollutants compared to wild-caught. These chemicals are fat-soluble, meaning they store in tissue and accumulate over time. Some research links long-term exposure to these pollutants with hormone-sensitive cancers, including breast cancer. Wild-caught is significantly cleaner. If you're choosing salmon for health, the source actually matters more than the species. Number three is in almost every kitchen, and most people have no idea. Refined vegetable oils. Canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil. These are in nearly every packaged food, fast food item, and restaurant meal. When these oils are processed at high heat, they oxidize and generate compounds that promote inflammation. Chronic inflammation is one of the key drivers behind cancer cell growth. These oils are also extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids, which when consumed in excess create a pro-inflammatory environment in your body. The problem isn't occasional use. The problem is that most people are consuming these oils 3 times a day, in foods they don't even cook themselves. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, because number 4 is something millions of people consume every morning: alcohol. Even moderate drinking, 1 glass of wine a day, has been classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. That means there is sufficient evidence linking it to cancer in humans. Alcohol increases estrogen levels in the blood, and elevated estrogen is a known risk factor for estrogen receptor-positive breast cancer, which accounts for about 70% of all breast cancer cases. The risk isn't just for heavy drinkers. Research suggests even light to moderate drinking raises the risk. This one is hard to say because it's deeply social, but the data doesn't soften it. Number 5 looks like health food, and that's exactly why it's dangerous. Highly processed soy products, tofu done right is fine, but the highly processed soy found in protein bars, fake meats, soy isolate powders, and mass-produced soy milk is a different story. These products are often made from genetically modified soybeans, heavily refined and concentrated with phytoestrogens, plant-based compounds that mimic estrogen in the body. For women who are estrogen sensitive or have a hormonal imbalance, regularly consuming high amounts of concentrated soy can potentially disrupt the endocrine system. Fermented soy, like miso and tempeh, is a different category. It's the processed, isolated soy you want to be cautious with. Now, number 6. This one is in every bakery, every birthday party, and almost certainly in your house right now. Refined sugar and ultra-processed carbohydrates. White bread, cakes, cookies, crackers, white rice in excess, these foods spike blood sugar rapidly, triggering a surge of insulin. Elevated insulin stimulates the production of IGF-1, a growth factor that research has linked to the proliferation of cancer cells, including breast cancer cells. Cancer feeds on glucose. A diet that constantly floods your bloodstream with sugar is essentially creating a favorable environment for tumor growth. This doesn't mean never eat cake. It means daily repetitive sugar spikes are something your body keeps score of, and the bill comes later. And now number 7, the one that's going to make you pause: dairy products, specifically the high hormone kind. Conventional milk, cheese, and butter from cows treated with synthetic growth hormones like RBGH contain elevated levels of IGF-1. Multiple studies have investigated the link between high dairy consumption and increased breast cancer risk, particularly in premenopausal women. The concern isn't dairy itself in small amounts. It's the hormones present in conventionally raised dairy and the sheer volume at which people consume it. Organic, hormone-free dairy from grass-fed sources has a significantly different hormonal profile. The label on the carton actually changes what you're drinking. Here's what almost nobody tells you: the real danger isn't any single food. It's the pattern. Processed meat for breakfast, refined oil in lunch, a sugary afternoon snack, a glass of wine with dinner, and conventional dairy before bed. Each one individually may seem manageable, but combined, daily, over years, you're not just eating. You're building a biological environment, and cancer doesn't happen overnight. It's built slowly, one meal at a time. The question is whether you're building toward disease or away from it. And that question is answered 3 times a day, every single day, on your plate. There are foods on the other side of this list too, ones that actively work against cancer cell growth, fight inflammation, and help regulate estrogen naturally. Those aren't talked about nearly enough. You eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. You're not eating poison. You're not trying to harm yourself. You're just eating. The same way your parents did, the same way your neighbors do, the same way everyone around you does. And that's exactly what makes this so dangerous. The foods that raise breast cancer risk aren't exotic chemicals or industrial waste. They're sitting in your refrigerator right now. They're in the lunch you packed this morning. They're in the healthy snack you grabbed before bed. Processed meats contain nitrates that convert into nitrosamines inside your body, and nitrosamines are classified carcinogens, meaning they have a confirmed ability to damage DNA and trigger abnormal cell behavior. Farmed salmon, widely sold as a superfood, can carry elevated levels of PCBs and dioxins, persistent organic pollutants that accumulate in fatty tissue over time and have been linked to hormone-sensitive cancers. Refined vegetable oils, canola, soybeans, sunflower are used in virtually every packaged food and restaurant meal on the planet, and when heated, they oxidize into compounds that drive chronic inflammation deep inside your cells. Here's what inflammation actually means in plain terms. It's not just soreness or redness. Chronic low-grade inflammation is a state your body stays locked in when it's constantly processing harmful compounds. And in that state, the environment inside you becomes friendlier to abnormal cell growth. Cancer doesn't appear overnight like a switch being flipped. It develops slowly, over months and years, in a body that has been given just enough of the wrong signals, repeatedly without interruption. Conventional dairy from cows treated with synthetic growth hormones contains elevated IGF-1, a growth factor that research has directly connected to the proliferation of cancer cells. Alcohol increases circulating estrogen levels, and elevated estrogen feeds estrogen receptor-positive breast cancer, which accounts for nearly 70% of all cases. Refined sugar creates insulin spikes that trigger more IGF-1 production. Every single one of these mechanisms is operating quietly, invisibly, in the background of what feels like a completely ordinary day. That's what makes this so difficult to see. There's no warning sign. There's no moment where your body tells you something is going wrong. The damage accumulates silently, so meal by meal, day by day, long before any symptom ever appears. Most women are thinking about breast cancer risk all wrong. They're looking for the one big thing: the family history, the genetic mutation, the obvious warning sign. But what if the real threat isn't dramatic at all? What if it's happening quietly inside your own hormonal system, triggered by things you consume before 9 a.m. every single morning? Estrogen is not your enemy. It's a natural hormone your body produces and needs. But when estrogen levels stay elevated for too long, or when foreign compounds trick your body into behaving as if estrogen is constantly flooding the system, the cells in breast tissue respond. They divide, they grow, and in that environment of constant hormonal stimulation, the risk of something going wrong, a mutation, an abnormal cell that doesn't stop dividing, increases significantly. Nearly 70% of all breast cancer cases are estrogen receptor positive, meaning the cancer cells literally use estrogen as fuel to grow faster. Now here's where your daily routine becomes the conversation. Alcohol, even 1 glass of wine per night, has been shown in research to raise circulating estrogen levels in the blood. The International Agency for Research on Cancer doesn't classify alcohol as a possible carcinogen or a probable one. It sits in Group 1, the same category as tobacco, meaning the evidence linking it to cancer in humans is sufficient and established. 1 drink a day, every day, is not a neutral habit. It is a slow, consistent hormonal signal being sent to your breast tissue over and over again. Processed soy products add another layer to this. The phytoestrogens in highly concentrated soy, found in protein powders, soy-based meat alternatives, and mass-produced soy milk, mimic estrogen at the receptor level. For women who are already hormonally sensitive or who are going through perimenopause when estrogen fluctuations are already unstable, Adding large amounts of concentrated phytoestrogens regularly is like pouring fuel on a fire that's already burning unevenly. Conventional dairy from hormone-treated cows brings synthetic growth hormones and elevated IGF-1 directly into your body with every sip and every bite. And the deeply unsettling part is that none of these sources feel dangerous in isolation. A glass of milk, a soy protein shake, a glass of wine with dinner, each one sounds completely reasonable. But when all three are part of the same daily routine, the cumulative hormonal pressure on your breast tissue is anything but reasonable. There's a process happening inside your body right now that most doctors never explain to their patients in plain language. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't show up on a basic blood test. But researchers who study cancer at the cellular level consider it one of the most important factors in whether cancer develops, spreads, or stays dormant. It's called chronic inflammation, and the food on your plate is either feeding it or fighting it every single day without exception. Inflammation itself is not the problem. Acute inflammation is your immune system doing exactly what it was designed to do, responding to a threat, healing damage, fighting infection. But chronic inflammation is something entirely different. It's a state where your immune system stays switched on, firing low-grade signals continuously because it keeps receiving inputs it was never built to handle at this volume and this frequency. And two of the most powerful drivers of chronic inflammation in the modern diet are refined vegetable oils and excess refined sugar, two things that are present in almost every processed food product currently sitting in grocery stores worldwide. Refined oils, canola, soybean, corn, sunflower, are extracted through industrial processes involving high heat, chemical solvents, and deodorization. By the time they reach your kitchen, they are already chemically unstable. When you cook with them at high temperatures, they oxidize further, generating aldehydes and other toxic byproducts that enter your bloodstream and trigger inflammatory responses at the cellular level. These oils are also overwhelmingly high in omega-6 fatty acids. Your body needs a balanced ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, ideally somewhere around 4:1. The average person consuming a modern diet is running at ratios closer to 20:1. That imbalance alone is enough to keep your body in a state of sustained, low-level inflammatory crisis. Now add refined sugar into that same body. Every time you consume white bread, pastries, sugary drinks, crackers, or processed snacks, your blood glucose spikes rapidly. Your pancreas releases insulin to manage that spike. Chronically elevated insulin then stimulates the production of IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, a compound that research has directly and repeatedly connected to the proliferation of cancer cells, including breast cancer cells. IGF-1 doesn't create cancer from nothing. What it does is accelerate the growth of cells that are already behaving abnormally. It removes the brakes. It tells damaged cells to keep dividing when a healthy body would have stopped them. What makes this particularly difficult to confront is that refined oils and refined sugar are not occasional indulgences for most people. They are the invisible backbone of the entire modern food supply. They are in the salad dressing, the whole wheat bread, the granola bar, the pasta sauce, the protein bar marketed as clean eating. The inflammation they create is not dramatic or sudden. It builds quietly, meal by meal, year after year, in a body that is doing its absolute best to cope with inputs it was never designed to process at this scale. There is something deeply uncomfortable about the way the food industry uses the word healthy. It gets printed on packaging, repeated in marketing campaigns, endorsed by nutritionists on social media, and absorbed by millions of people who are genuinely trying to make better choices for their bodies. And the cruelest part is that some of the most aggressively marketed healthy foods are the ones carrying hidden risks that never make it onto the label, because the label only tells you what the company wants you to know. Take farmed salmon. It is everywhere. It is recommended by doctors, praised by dietitians, stacked in every supermarket at a price point that makes it accessible and practical. And salmon genuinely is nutritious, high in protein, rich in omega-3 fatty acids, a legitimate dietary asset when it comes from the right source. But farmed salmon lives in a completely different biological reality than wild-caught salmon. Farmed fish are raised in densely packed enclosures, fed processed feed that alters their nutritional profile, and exposed to persistent organic pollutants, PCBs, dioxins, and chlorinated pesticides at levels that independent research has consistently found to be significantly higher than in wild-caught varieties. These pollutants are fat-soluble, meaning they don't flush out of your system easily. They accumulate in fatty tissue over time, building up with every serving, and their long-term presence in the body has been investigated in connection with hormone-sensitive cancers, including breast cancer. The fish looks identical in the store. The packaging says nothing about any of this. Processed soy products follow exactly the same pattern of deceptive healthfulness. Whole fermented soy, miso, tempeh, natto, has a long history of safe consumption and carries genuine health benefits. But the soy found in modern protein isolate powders, plant-based meat alternatives, soy-based dairy substitutes, and mass-produced packaged foods is a chemically processed, highly concentrated extract that bears almost no resemblance to traditional soy. The phytoestrogens in this concentrated form are present at levels far beyond what any traditional diet ever delivered. And for women with existing hormonal imbalances, endocrine disruption histories, or estrogen-sensitive conditions, regularly flooding the body with these compounds creates a level of estrogenic stimulation that the marketing team behind the product will never mention on the front of the box. Conventional dairy carries its own version of this deception. Milk has been positioned for generations as wholesome, natural, and essential, a food so fundamentally safe that questioning it feels almost absurd. But conventional dairy from cows treated with recombinant bovine growth hormone contains elevated levels of IGF-1, a growth factor with a documented connection to cancer cell proliferation. Organic, hormone-free dairy from grass-fed sources has a measurably different hormonal composition. The difference is real, it is scientifically documented, and it is completely invisible to anyone standing in the dairy aisle reading nothing but the nutrition facts panel. This is what makes the healthy label problem so much more serious than simple misinformation. It is not just that people are being misled, it is that they are being misled while actively trying to protect their health. The woman buying farmed salmon instead of red meat, drinking soy milk instead of conventional dairy, adding processed soy protein to her smoothie every morning, she is making what she believes are conscious, informed, protective choices. And the gap between what she believes she is doing and what is actually happening inside her body is exactly where long-term risk quietly takes root. Nobody gets cancer from one meal. That sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but the implication of that simple fact is something most people never fully sit with. If no single meal causes cancer, then no single meal feels dangerous. And if no single meal feels dangerous, then every individual choice gets mentally filed under fine, because in isolation, it genuinely is. One glass of wine is fine. One serving of processed meat is fine. One meal cooked in refined vegetable oil is fine. The problem is that the human brain is extraordinarily good at evaluating moments and extraordinarily bad at evaluating patterns stretched across years. Cancer is not an event. It is an accumulation. It is the end result of a biological environment that was built slowly, consistently, and almost invisibly through thousands of small decisions that each felt completely inconsequential in the moment they were made. Researchers who study tumor development talk about the concept of a pro-cancer environment, a state inside the body where chronic inflammation is elevated, where insulin and IGF-1 are repeatedly spiked, where estrogen levels are chronically higher than they should be, where persistent pollutants have accumulated in fatty tissue, where the immune system is perpetually overwhelmed and distracted. No single food creates that environment alone, but a pattern, a daily repeated, unexamined pattern, absolutely can. Think about what a completely ordinary day looks like for millions of women right now. Breakfast includes conventional dairy and a processed grain product cooked in or containing refined oil. Lunch includes deli meat or a soy-based protein alternative. An afternoon snack is something packaged, sweet, and built on refined carbohydrates that spike blood sugar within minutes. Dinner includes farmed salmon or conventionally raised meat, cooked in vegetable oil, followed by a glass of wine that feels like a well-earned reward after a long day. Every single item in that day has appeared somewhere in this conversation. Every single one contributes something: inflammation, hormonal disruption, carcinogenic compounds, growth factor stimulation, to an internal environment that is being quietly shaped over months and years without a single visible symptom announcing what is happening. The body keeps score in a language that doesn't translate into feelings until the damage is already significant. There is no alarm. There is no pain. There is no moment where your body sends a clear signal that the pattern you have built is working against you. The cells are simply responding to the environment you have created for them, dividing, adapting, accumulating mutations in complete silence across a timeline that feels impossibly slow until suddenly it doesn't. What this means practically is that the question was never really about any single food. The question has always been about the architecture of your daily routine, what you reach for automatically, what you consider normal, what you have never once thought to examine because everyone around you is doing exactly the same thing. Awareness is not the same as fear. Understanding the pattern is not the same as living in anxiety about every meal. It is simply the difference between building your daily environment consciously and building it by default. And that difference, accumulated across years, is where health outcomes are actually decided.